Environment and ecology, there is approximately 50 marks in prelims examination and cutoff is mostly around 100 marks. So environment and ecology is important. Last 4 chapters of class 12 biology can make your concepts clear and you can find most of the questions coming out from this source. And not only that, concept that you will learn, you can apply those concepts in the rest of the questions to solve multiple choice questions. This series can help you in elimination of those options. Anyone who wants to learn basic environment and ecology can watch this video series. Even if you are NEET aspirant, UPSC aspirant or class 12 student or giving any competitive exams such as CDS, CAPF or any state services, this series is for you. Here we will revise organisms and population in detail with the help of notes in under 30 minutes. And similarly, we can cover the next 3 chapters as well. So without a further ado, let us begin. Unity in diversity represents our country. India is colorful. We have deserts, mountain glaciers, hill stations, rivers, forests, beaches and islands. We have diversity in species too. Very environment around you is diverse. In this chapter, we will learn how different organisms adapt and adjust with first, other organisms and second, environment itself. And their ultimate goal is often survival. At any level of biological environment, we can ask 2 types of questions. That is, how and why. Now you guys know Bulbul. She is able to produce beautiful melodies. Now I have 2 questions. How a bulbul sings? And secondly, why a bulbul sings early in the morning? The answer will be vocal cord in the first question and in the second one to communicate. So bulbul sings with the help of vocal cord to communicate. The point is how type questions seek mechanism while why type questions seeks purpose. Now how sociology teaches us interaction of various communities. Similar to that, ecology is a subject which studies the interaction among organisms and between the organism and its physical environment, that is abiotic environment. Ecology is basically concerned with 4 levels of biological organizations. First, organisms, second, populations, third, communities, and lastly, biomes. In this chapter, we explore ecology at organismic and population level, that is first 2. Now, organism and its environment. Ecology at the organismic level, that is the first level itself, is essentially physiological ecology, which tries to understand how different organisms are adapted to their environments in terms of not only survival but also reproduction. Let us imagine a class where every kind of student is present, padaku, multi-talented, sports person, but everyone has to pass in order to get promoted to next standard, irrespective of their IQ, background and interest. Everyone has to survive. Similarly, every organism has to survive irrespective of variation. This variation can be variation in temperature, rainfall, humidity, salinity, etc. Now, why is there variation in our planet at the first place? The rotation of our planet around the sun and the tilt of its axis causes annual variations in the temperature, resulting in distinct seasons due to differences in rainfall, temperature and other factors. It is not like that only moderate climate of Goa is suitable for life. Life exists in the hot climate of Rajasthan too. It also exists in the rain-soaked Meghalaya forest and also in the deep ocean trenches. Let us take the example of our Indian soldiers. Our respected soldiers serve the nation in minus 16 degrees without adequate facilities. They are also humans and still they are surviving. You will be amazed to know that even our intestine is a unique habitat for hundreds of species of microbes. Over a period of time, through natural selection and evolution, an organism adapts itself for survival and reproduction. Example is us. Our ancestors had tails, but they got rid of it because when they moved away from trees to plains to more nomadic lifestyle, functional role of tail reduced and eventually we got rid of it. Similarly, giraffe. Giraffe has evolved long necks because successive generations realized that extra vertebrae help them to get access to tender leaves on top of trees. That is why they have long necks. Some studies also say that the smallest finger or pinky finger will not be there in the future. Why? Because it is contributing less to our workings. Now let us discuss some of the basic terms which will help you in understanding this chapter. Environment. Environment means our surroundings. Like we can say about the environment of our room or hostel. Usually we say, my working environment is not so cooperative. एक इधर से टांग खींच रहा है तो एक उधर से. और इन हॉस्टल समर्स के टाइम बहुत गर्मी होती है एंड ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट आपका रूममेट आपको कुछ उल्टा सीधा पीने को इन्फ्लुएंस करता है. सो वी कैन से दैट एनवायरनमेंट इज नॉट सो कोऑपरेटिव फॉर स्टडीज. So, environment means our surroundings that includes both biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic means human beings, animals or any living thing which is surrounding us, and abiotic means factors such as sunlight, soil, temperature which are non-living things. Next, ecosystem. What makes a home a home? Its members, feelings that we exchange, food that we share, sense of belongingness. Also material goods such as TV, AC, fridge, etc. and daily interaction and all. Same way, ecosystem is sum total of biotic and abiotic components of a particular geographical area. It is a functional unit of nature. Here, living organisms interact among themselves and surrounding nature. They exchange energies and recycling of nutrients take place in the environment. Now what is habitat? In your city, your society is your habitat. It is a place where an organism or population of an organism lives and reproduces. Example, for polar bears, Arctic Sea and surrounding glaciers are their habitat. And many habitats combined together make an environment. Now remember that reproduction is equally important to survival. Actually, the apparent goal of every organism is to fill the available space with its offspring. So, habitat is a place where you live and reproduce. Now, what is ecology? Ecology is a branch of biology which studies interaction between organisms and between organism and surroundings. Now, what is biosphere? The biosphere is made up of the part of earth where life exists. The biosphere extends from the deepest root systems of trees to the dark environment of ocean trenches, to the lush rainforest and high mountain tops. Since life exists on the ground, in the air and in the water, the biosphere overlaps all these spheres. Now let us discuss the next term, that is carrying capacity. The maximum number of organisms of a population that can be sustained by a given habitat. For example, how many organisms can resources support if resources are enough for 5 but there are 8 people? If there are 8 people and resources are for 5 people, then we can say that given habitat is overpopulated and it is beyond carrying capacity of that habitat. Now one of the most important concept, ecological niche, that is the role of an organism in an ecosystem where it lives. Let me give you a simple example. The society in which you are living is your habitat. You are a student, so your functional role is you eat, you play and you study. If you are a policeman, you maintain law and order. This is how you contribute and make impact. Now, this is for your understanding. Now let us take more conventional example of dung beetle. Dung beetles eat dung. Dung is plentiful in almost all biomes. Dung beetle eats that dung and make a ball out of it. It feeds on it and female lay their eggs on that ball. By doing so, they provide nutrition to soil. So this is a functional role of a dung beetle in environment. They eat the dung, so their stomach gets filled and they provide nutrition to soil. Now what is biome? A biome is a large community of vegetation and wildlife adapted to a specific climate. So it is a community adapted to a specific climate. It is a large area characterized by its vegetation, soil, climate and wildlife. So each biome has a special characteristic. They have specific vegetation, specific soil, specific climate and wildlife. Savanna, tropical rainforest, temperate rainforest, taiga and so on. Now let us move to the next subtopic, that is major abiotic factors. The first one is temperature. Have you ever asked your mama why she doesn't put curd in the freezer to get set? The most interesting example is from our daily life only. In freezer, organism will not be able to tolerate less temperature and the result will be less reproduction of organisms and the curd will be imperfect. I hope you got the point. Temperature variation can be so high that temperature ranges from sub-zero levels in polar areas and high altitudes to 500 degrees Celsius in tropical deserts in summer. There are, however, unique habitats such as thermal springs and deep sea hydrothermal vents where average temperature exceeds 1000 degrees Celsius. Now let us move to the next concept. Now some of your friends get angry even at very small things. But some of them are cool and are very flexible and can tolerate any nuisance of yours. There are yours, Yuri friends. Similar concept applies here. A few organisms can tolerate and thrive in a wide range of temperature. They are eurythermals. Example includes man, goat and cow. And a vast majority of them are restricted to narrow range of temperature. They are stenothermals. Example include reptiles, crustaceans, insects, salmons, penguins, python, crocodile, etc. These are stenothermals. Now next important abiotic factor is water. Jal hi jeevan hai. The famous slogan of Jal Jeevan Mission of a water ministry, used in every template, itself signifies the importance of water. Its availability is so limited in desert that only special adaptations make it possible for organisms to live there. The productivity distribution of plants is also heavily dependent on water. Now, for aquatic organisms, the quality of water is also important. Quality means the chemical composition and pH level of the water. The salt concentration is also measured as salinity in parts per thousand is also important. The salinity which is measured in parts per thousand is less than 5 in inland waters, 30 to 35 in the seas and more than 100 in some hypersaline lagoons. Now some water species सब कुछ सहन कर लेते हैं and they are called euryhaline. Examples of euryhalines are oysters, clams, etc. And some water species are very sensitive to salinity of water. Examples are coral reefs and goldfish. Now let us move to the next important abiotic factor, that is light. Since plants produce food through photosynthesis, a process which is only possible when sunlight is available as a source of energy, we can quickly understand the importance of light for living organisms, particularly autotrophs. Autotrophs खुद का खाना खुद बना लेते हैं. Many species of small plants, herbs and shrubs growing in forest are adapted to photosynthesis, optimally under very low light conditions because they are constantly overshadowed by tall canopied trees. Many plants are also dependent on sunlight to meet their photoperiodic requirement for flowering. But imagine deep in the oceans, even in those benthic areas where sunlight is not adequate, we find life there. वहाँ light कौन भेजता है? What then is the source of energy there? Now, some of them feed on dead animal carcasses that sink deep after dying, and some feed on chemicals coming out from deep sea vents. Now the next important factor is soil. Variation can be found in soils too. It is dependent on the climate, the weathering process, whether soil is transported or sedimentary in nature, and how soil development has occurred. Various characteristics of the soil such as soil composition, grain size and aggregation determine the percolation and water holding capacity of the soils. These characteristics along with parameters such as pH level, mineral composition and topography determine to a large extent what kind of vegetation that soil can support in any given area. This in turn dictates the type of animal that can be supported. Similarly, in the aquatic environment, the sediment characteristic often determine the type of benthic animals that can thrive on that type of soil. Now we learned about abiotic factors. such as water, sunlight, and soil. Now let us learn about responses to these abiotic factors by organisms. How do the organisms living in such habitats cope or manage with stressful conditions and variation in these abiotic factors? During the course of millennium of years, species would have evolved a relatively constant internal environment that permits all biochemical reactions and psychological functions to proceed with maximal efficiency, and this enhances the overall fitness of the species. Now, what is homeostasis? It is a self-regulating process by which an organism tends to maintain stability while adjusting to conditions that are best for its survival. Now, this definition is important and it will be the basis for the next conversation. Now, depending on the responses to abiotic factors, we find two types of organisms, regulators and conformers. And there are another two types that we will discuss further. The first one is regulate. Organisms maintain homeostasis by ensuring constant body temperature, that is thermoregulation, and constant osmotic concentration, that is osmoregulation. For example, mammals regulate temperature by shivering in cold and sweating in heat. Now let us take a simple example. While going in a congested bus, you regulate according to the seat which is available to you. अगर सीट पूरा का पूरा खाली है तो आप फैल के बैठते हो, और if there are 2 or 3 people, you adjust as per the size and availability of space. So you are flexible in this regard. Similarly, humans live both in polar regions as well as in the tropical deserts of Sahara, and they are successful in doing so because they can adjust or maintain a constant body temperature. In summer we sweat because our outside temperature is more than body temperature, and in winters we start to shiver, which produces heat and raises the body temperature. But ये तो हमने अपना सोच लिया. What about plants? Have you ever seen them shivering? Is it possible for them to maintain body temperature? Now let us move to the next category, that is conformers. 99% of animals and nearly all plants cannot maintain a constant internal environment, and that's why they have not evolved to become regulators. This is a very similar to concept that I cannot afford an air conditioner, so I simply conform to surrounding temperature. But we are regulators, our internal AC maintains our temperature. But see, the point I am trying to make is that as AC is expensive, similarly thermoregulation is energetically expensive for many organisms. Small animals like shrews or hummingbirds are conformers because they are relatively too small. The heat they produce is significantly less and not enough to keep them warm enough. As small animals have larger surface area relative to their volume, they tend to lose body heat very fast when it is cold outside. Then they have to expand much energy to generate body heat through metabolism. This is the main reason why very small animals are rarely found in polar regions. Some species have evolved the ability to regulate, but only over a limited range of environmental conditions, beyond which they simply conform. If they cannot afford even this, they are left with only two alternatives, that is, to migrate or to suspend. Now migrate. This is to avoid the stressful habitat to a more hospitable area and return when the stressful period is over. Now, तुम भी तो क्लास बंक करते हो जब बोरिंग टीचर का पीरियड खत्म होता है. In human analogy, this strategy is like persons moving from Delhi to Shimla for the duration of summer, or Russians moving to Goa during the harsh winters. Many animals, particularly birds, during winter undertake long distance migration to more hospitable areas. Every winter, the famous Kevladev National Park of Bharatpur, Rajasthan is a host to thousands of migratory birds coming from Siberia and other extreme cold northern regions. The next is suspend. When you cannot migrate, you surrender. The